Hello and welcome back, you guys. Thanks for joining me again. And this year, I'm really getting into fantasy, like way more than usual. I've always been in fantasy. Let me say not more than usual. I'm getting into like older fantasy more. Because this year, my goal is to read the Wheel of Time series. Wow! Why? Because I don't know. So many people have said they loved it. It's their favorite series in the world. And honestly, I could do with some solid world building is really what I want. And I have 16, 15 books, depending on how you count it, to get me there. So, let me say this. I watched the first season of The Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime, and that's why I wanted to read the series even more so, because I thought they did a pretty okay job. Was it amazing? No, they missed a lot. Like, now that I read it, I'm thinking back to the series. I thought it was really good, and then I read the books, and now I'm like, oh man, we missed out on so much. But is what it is. Whatever. And because I watched it with my husband, we are not watching the second series until I get the second book read. And he does not like that, so I have gotta get my gear into motion about reading it. I have been listening to them as audiobooks. I listened to The Wheel of Time as an audiobook for the first part, and then I actually did borrow it from the library because the audiobook was going to be returned and I wasn't going to be finished with it. So I did end up finishing it as a physical book from the library. And I accidentally spilled coffee on it, and it wasn't bad enough. They didn't make me pay for it, so there you go. Still felt really bad, but hey, it happens. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to give a little synopsis of what the story is about. Then I'm going to break it down into what I kind of thought about the characters, the character growth. Trying not to get into too much of like what happens in the book, because I don't want to spoil it for very many people. Because I don't mind watching those videos sometimes, I don't want to just rely on just telling you what happens in the book. The Two Rivers is a small and quiet village. Winter is holding on fiercely, and spring hasn't come. But a mysterious woman, Moraine, has come into the village. When the village is attacked by half-beast monsters, Moraine reveals herself to be an Aes Sedai, somebody who can wield the one true power. She convinces Mat, Rand, and Perrin to leave to protect the village. But before they leave, Egwene convinces them that they have to take her with them so that she can leave and see the world. The adventure continues as Nynaeve finds them and tries to convince the Two Rivers folks to go back with her because they left and they're not exactly adults yet, and so they're not supposed to make their own decisions, which is part of the gods, but they're like late teens. Anyways, but the pattern is being woven tighter and tighter, and all of them are a part of it. So what does the adventure continue? Well, it continues for 16 books is what it does. 15, 14, I don't know. It's a lot. I've been looking at a lot of book series. Alright, so all the characters felt like they had really good growth. I do wish that we had more in some characters and that we got to spend more time. And some of the characters sometimes felt super whiny, which is kind of par for the course because that kind of happens. The stakes felt really high. I actually really enjoyed it because it was since the group got separated fairly early on in the story, and I liked how he managed it and how he kind of wrote it. Because of the multiple separations, we get to see the characters interact with each other and grow apart from them. Because all of these people have been in the same town forever, and then they get to leave. It's like whenever you're from a small town and then you go to college and then like you have to meet back up with people and you're like, man, I've changed a lot. That's kind of how it was. That's what I felt like it was. And you know, some people didn't respect towards the end about who exactly they decided they wanted to become. And it was kind of surprising about like who it was. And not so surprising. Some of them were pretty I expected them to be like, ooh, no, you shouldn't change because that's not who you are. And comparing it to the book to the show, you miss out on so many characters when you just watch the show. so far. Haven't watched season 2. Maybe season 2 brings some of these characters back, but definitely in season 1, you miss out on a lot of characters. I still think they got that pacing pretty right, because even though it is such a long book, it does actually have pretty decent pacing. Some of it was like, oh, there's this fun middle in between, which is like you just kind of doing like some daily life stuff with them, and that how it kind of progresses. Really enjoyed that part of the book. What surprised me was Perrin is currently my favorite character. I thought his character growth was so good. I thought it was really interesting about how he was touching upon this source that's not like the one true power, but is still a part of nature, and how the Aes Sedai and his mentor about the power, but it's not like not a true mentor, but also like a guide, more like a guide, was trying to tell him, like, I said, I don't like this. Like old things are coming back. Something is happening. Something is happening within the world, and we don't have control of it. They don't have control over what is happening. I really enjoyed that. And the Tinklers were so freaking cute. Liked them so much. And I thought they were really interesting in the sense of like how they're pacifist, but they, like, you know, everyone's like, ooh, don't go to them because they're not great. But I thought it was really good. Like, I did think they did a good job on that part of the story, comparing it to the book to them, because every culture is different. And I liked how Perrin had to experience that, even though he is having this very aggressive nature influence with the Tinklers, who are very vehemently pacifist, and his character growth with experiencing different things and having songs and just doing different things, like having to experience a different culture, really helped him grow as a character so far. Really enjoyed that. Egwene's growth, I think, is definitely there. It just feels a little more limited at this point. She is struggling between what she was supposed to do as a girl in a small village. Her biggest option was to become the wisdom, which the wisdom is just like the wise woman, or the person who takes care of like sicknesses and the fortune teller type of deal. Magic's a little more prominent in this society, but it's not like the main thing. It is still like women's work, because if men touch upon the one power, they go insane. So this is also why I think seeing Egwene and Perrin interact a little bit closer whenever the group was separated was very interesting to me, because Egwene at this point has lost her teacher. Moiraine was teaching her up to the point of separation, some different things. Now Perrin is in this situation of he's communicating more with nature and the wolves within it, and he's trying to figure out a little bit more about what he is. I really hope we see more and like bigger growth and like more of the magic system. Like that's really interesting to me. So another group was the Gleeman, Rand, and Mat that were together. And that group setting was really interesting, because I think Rand really had to figure out who he was, or who he wanted to be, but he also like would sidestep it all the time. And you can see the little instances where he's interacting with the one true source. And I like how it's like the very beginning, you're kind of like, okay, I think that's what it is. Because he does it within the Two Rivers, and whenever the half-beast attack, he does it then a little bit. And then you just see how it kind of builds. And part of me wonders is like, how did Moiraine not see that? But at the same time, it's like you have Perrin who's having this kind of situation. Then you have Mat, who is a direct descendant, I believe, of one of the Two Rivers people that found him. And his interactions are very interesting. But whenever Mat and Rand are just them together, and how Rand is trying to keep Mat alive, and they're using the Gleeman as like a way to the Gleeman did teach them how to be storytellers and juggle and stuff like that. So that was very interesting to me because I really enjoyed seeing that progress with them, and that I don't like how Matt is really a little more obsessed with Egwene right now still. My bangs, sorry. I don't like how he really just wants to put Egwene in a bubble and not let her grow. Which, I mean, you can't fault him for that, because for a really long time he grew up with this is he wanted this simple life. He is the very stereotypical boy on farm, boy doesn't want to leave farm, boy has to leave farm. And since this is such a long process, he's been thinking about going back to the Two Rivers since he leaves, which can get kind of annoying as the reader. You're constantly hearing he'd rather be back at the very beginning of the story, and then he does have some character growth, and he does have some instances of what's gonna happen, how is he going to progress as a person. Matt, I feel, kind of gets a little gypped because he gets sick at the very beginning of the story, pretty close to the beginning of the story. So he's not really the main focus in this novel, in this book. So he kind of you see that he's sick, and he doesn't really want to take care of that because the sickness is magical and more like a possession, if we're being honest. It's more like a possession rather than a sickness, but it does make him physically ill to where Rand has to take care of him. It was really interesting to see about how Rand would take care of Matt and trying to get them to where they're supposed to be, which is a hard journey. I wish there was more growth in Nynaeve and Egwene because it felt a little lackluster, and I do understand it. And I've heard that there is romance, but people are like, it's such a long burn romance. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can do this for the romance. You can't read it for the romance. This is not a romance novel at all. There is romance, and he's going to take his time with it. There's going to be feelings, and that's okay. So with Moiraine, I do understand where they kind of put her as the wise woman, the wizard that comes in, quite literally, to sweep away this group of people. What I don't understand is Lan, her sword, her guy that she is traveling with. We're not even told that they have any physical, emotional relationship besides just partners. That is not presented on the page. But it's easy to kind of assume, and if there's not, and I'm wrong, then that's totally fine. But I don't understand about the end of the book that Nynaeve and Lan are starting to have feelings for each other, and I think it's really weird. Why do I think it's weird? It's because he already has a life oath to Moiraine, and even if there's a life oath and they're not together in that way, I still gotta think it's weird, because my understanding is he can't really just I can just switch whenever Egwene becomes there. And I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong. But I don't like it right now. That is one thing I thought felt a little forced. Mostly because it didn't get very much time on the page, and that can be very jarring. Now I also understand a choice is done because we are with multiple people. I think technically this writing style is a third person limited because you get to see multiple people, but you only see within a small group of people just playing throughout these. So you don't get to see the whole romance. And maybe there is stronger feelings, or there's more instances. But it's, at the moment, I'm not a fan of the romance in it. It's gonna have to really pull through and really do a really nice slow burn for me, and we'll see how that goes. Because I am not reading these for the romance, I'm reading it for the plot and the world building. And I've heard many people say it's the world building and plot are pretty solid. Relationships are, could be more dynamic but everyone has their strong suit, and it's honestly been a really fun world to play in within NC in the sandbox. But yeah, like the world building's been absolutely fantastic. I thought it's been really interesting. I really can't wait to see what more we get from it, because it also, you know, some people are like super info dump. We're getting some of that, but at the same time, it feels very natural. It's like we have people who are learning about different aspects of the different cultures and stuff like that. And I think it's like, it feels very natural instead of like, we're going to info dump about this one culture that we're only going to see one time. It's like, no, this is like the current prejudices that people like Egwene and Perrin had of the Tinkers, because they were always told, it's like, ooh, don't go around them, they'll steal the socks off your feet. And they had prejudice, and then they have to live with them, and they find out that they're really just good people. They're, you know, just people at that point. They're not like super malicious or trying to get anything from them. So going into more of the writing style, it's third person limited, meaning that we have multiple characters, but in a limited sense of like we only have this small group of characters. It could be kind of jarring going from one person to another, but I thought it was done in a way that felt pretty good. Like, it wasn't like, we're in this person's head now, and bam, we're in this person's head. It was not like that. It was like usually a page break or an end of a chapter, and you might change the person. So doing it this way also allows us as the reader to understand a lot more of what's going on in the story, because you get a lot more internal monologue. You get the story of how everyone's really experiencing. You get to see more Perrin, how he's experiencing the Tinkers versus Egwene, and I guess not really Egwene, so you don't see her point of view too much. You see mostly the voices. You see Rand, Perrin, a little bit of Mat, and then some of the girls. It's been a minute since I've read it. I took a while getting this one set up, just because like I procrastinated, if we're gonna be honest, so it was a little rough. So you also get a lot of internal monologue, and I also remember hearing that whenever they were filming The Wheel of Time, that was something they struggled with, because a lot of the dialogue is internal. You're having like the internal reactions, and bringing that internal reaction out to a visual format where you're having to just project that, it can be kind of difficult. So you have to find creative ways to do that. Haha, I have my notes here, and the books, there's 13 plus a prequel, so I think in total as 15 books. Yeah, there's like 15 books in this series. I've got a while. Overall, I really do like the story so far. Like I've said, some of the character interactions felt a little forced. I thought it was really interesting that they had Perrin and Egwene there together a lot, and it felt like their relationship might develop a little bit more, which I think would be more interesting. And again, the romance with Lan and Nynaeve is something I don't know. It's gonna take a little bit more explaining, because like you don't see very much of it. You just see very short instances to where like her feelings feel very out of nowhere as like the reader. And like, but at the same time, you're only with them like a short amount of time. And, but with the internal monologue, you should like start, I don't know. It's going to take some convincing, and it's also a very different type of romance. Again, I read a lot of romantic fantasy where it's like you are developing feelings in the first half of the novel. You might get a little, like you're just like, that's the main process, is like you're developing feelings, you might have to fight for them, and then we're back on the feelings, and then like that's how you end the story. That is something I'm very used to, so it's going to be a struggle for me to remember this is a 14 book series. The romance has to last 14 books for different people, so it's going to be okay eventually. Which is like, that's it. It's like, it'll be okay eventually, I think. I don't know. And don't even get me started on like the world building, because like the world building is like, that's really where it's at. You have this magic system that's very fast, and that men aren't supposed to touch or use, otherwise they go insane, but women can. But then Perrin's over here with like this ability at this moment. We're not too specific on what it is, and you get into it and you just see like the changes that are happening with him, and they're not necessarily negative or positive. They're pretty neutral, or positive, because, you know, it's like he has some eyes in the woods pretty much. I think that's pretty cool. So this did take me about a month and a half to read, and I liked it quite a bit. It's definitely something, like, if you're going to read, you've got to put some time and effort into it, and I definitely do recommend the audiobooks, because Rosamund Pike, who plays Moraine in The Wheel of Time, is the narrator, and she does a fantastic job. It's been a lot of fun listening to them. I will continue this series. I don't think I'm going to finish it in 2024, but hey, we'll see. Maybe I'll read like 2 or 3 books in 1 month, but I don't know. Because I do like to mix it up. I read a lot of different things. If you love fantasy and are willing to spend some time with a book and possibly a series, I do recommend it. I don't think I'm going to review every single book. I might group them together. Maybe I will. Who knows? It's going to have to see how it goes, because I might, because that's a lot of books. That's a lot of book. That's a lot of book. And I've been recommended, actually, on TikTok, on my TikTok account. I'll even link it below. I told people, like, some mini update, like, oh, I'm reading this. It was really good. Just finished it. And some people recommended that I skip some books. They're like, oh, skip book 5, 6, 7. They're kind of boring. And I'm like, why? Why would I want to do that? Like, that doesn't make sense. Who knows? I might read them and I might tell you, come back and be like, don't bother, guys. Like, it doesn't do anything for the series. So let me know if you guys have read this series and you think I should read the whole series as is, skip some books, come back to some books. Please stay in touch, like, subscribe. I want to get to know you. Bye, guys.